How we doing there, boys and girls? Manthieus here, and welcome back to another video. So today, Blizzard dropped on us a huge preview of what the professions are going to potentially look like once we head into Dragonflight. Now, of course, at this point, we're still without an alpha, so come on, Blizzard, let's get that in our hands nice and quickly now. At least an alpha or beta or some in-game footage of what this is going to look like. But I wanted to spend a bit of time today and go through this and try and break it down in a little bit of detail. We talked about this for a long time on stream today, so I wanted to try and compact it a little bit into shorter form for you guys that just want to get the kind of like the good stuff, the juice out of it. First and foremost, before I start this, though, I want to give a big shout out to my patrons. It's you guys out there that give me the ability to do this, so I got to give my props to you guys. If you're a Patreon currently, massive thank you to you. If you're not already, there's a link down in the description to check it out. I do try and offer something back for you guys supporting the channel in terms of things like some support with Trade Skill Master, my own personal groups and operations. And there's some sections in the Discord that are a little bit more private where we can do a little bit more one-to-one goal making and that sort of fun. So thank you to any of my Patreons. But with Dragonflight now presumably not that far away, a few months away at this point, they've already indicated by the preview, by the pre-order I should say, that we might get Dragonflight before the end of the year. Meaning they're gonna really need to start wrapping up development on this and get it into the hands of people for testing pretty quickly, I'd imagine. It's nice to see though that professions are getting some love and that the professions are hopefully going to be something a little bit more fun and engaging to play around with. For me, I've got the illusion or the impression very quickly on that the professions are, or at least the changes to professions are going to be pretty divisive. There are two types of people that are going to look at this and they're going to think very different things. There are some people that utilize the professions as a way in game to just make a bunch of gold to cover the cost of their potions, their flasks, and all that sort of good stuff. Those players are going to look at this and just think it's really overly complicated for what they want to achieve, and they may also very quickly come to the conclusion that there's not going to be a huge amount of gold to be made from this, and I can't disagree. Everything that seems to be put forward to us recently from Blizzard seems to be indicative of it being more fun but less profitable. The profits and the gold that we've seen through Shadowlands, through systems like the base legendary system, doesn't appear to be something that they want to repeat. But let's take a little bit of a dive through this and see what's going on then. So to start off, they're going to cover a few things. They're going to talk a little bit about crafting orders, a touch on the profession specializations, but the main chunk of this little article was actually on the crafting and gathering and how that's going to be determined by this new system that they're integrating called quality. Now, this does not mean quality like rarity. Rarity is different to quality. Rarities are uncommon, common, rare, epic, legendary, that sort of thing. That's still maintaining, but they're adding this quality level on top. It's another layer, and with another layer comes an extra level of complexity, and with extra complexity, either comes fun if that's your jam, or you just look at it and be like, ugh. So hopefully we can break this down a little bit and you can work out which camp you sit in. For reference, both camps are perfectly fine to be in, by the way. Let's just cover crafting orders real quick then. We're not going to go into huge detail on crafting orders because we've kind of seen what this is going to be previously. Just as a quick overview for the crafting orders then. Crafting orders, simply put, is going to allow people who want specific items made for them to tell the crafters what it is they want. Some key things to note from here is this little tab on the up on the top right hand corner. This is still a mock-up. You can tell this is very photoshopped. This is very mock-up design, but you're going to be able to put forward your work order to one of three different locations. Either make it public so anybody can fulfill it. You can make it accessible to guild members only, or you can send a work order to a specific individual. Now, the times of when you're going to choose which one of those three is going to differ depending on what you're trying to craft. I would imagine if you're in an organized guild, it kind of makes sense to sort of, share the love between yourselves. So you want to get your guild members to make the things for you, because presumably if your guild members are getting better at crafting this gear, then next time you need an upgrade or something, you know that there's that person there to help you out. If you're like me and have like just many alts and have all of the professions ticked on one character or another, you may choose, and I hope this becomes a case, you may choose to just send the work order to yourself indirectly, sending it to your alt for your alt to fulfill it. This may be a thing for the big goblins, for the people that really like to play around with the professions. They can almost become self-sufficient if you have enough characters, or if neither one of those two options really applies, you can send it out publicly and Joe Blogs can fulfill it for you. What you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to provide some of the reagents needed to craft said item. You're going to be able to specify what quality of item that you want to be made. This will become a big key feature later on in this little post when we talk about the quality in a little bit more detail. And then you're going to offer a commission for the crafting of said item. Now, my first initial big concern with the crafting work orders is that if you're putting them out publicly, there's nearly always a greater supply than there is demand for most things in the game. Just take a look at the auction house today. The auction house will have 20 different, 20 different 262 leg plates listed, and a buyer can turn up and pick whichever one of them that they want. The likelihood that these commissions are going to be super high, very little. It'll be a bit of a race to the bottom, in my opinion. You may find that these commissions become virtually nothing as time goes on, as there will always be somebody out there willing to press the button. We find out later that the crafting and the progression of your professions is going to require people to fulfill a whole bunch of these crafting orders. And the natural thing that's going to occur there is that people can press a button and get personal progress. They can increase their skill in a profession by fulfilling a work order. There'll be many people out there that will be more than happy to do it without making huge amounts of gold at the same time. We'll see how this pans out with, the different materials and stuff, but the fundamentals is quite simple. You can put forward an order for a piece of crafted gear. I should specify this is crafted gear, and at this moment they claim it to only be for Dragonflight related stuff. Maybe in the future they'll, step back and do other expansion things, but for the moment it's just Dragonflight stuff. But it's quite a simple little interface that will be new. It will go alongside the auction house. It won't replace the auction house. It will just be an additional two that will be engaged with by the main gear crafters. You will also be able to customize this order a little bit more so with optional reagents. Blizzard seems to be going big on optional reagents in Dragonflight. They sort of tested the water quite a lot in Shadowlands. We've had all of the crafters' marks. We've had missives. It appears that they're going to take that process and build upon it a little bit more so to offer more diversity in what's crafted and at what level and at what power level and all of this sort of stuff. You can adjust. You can add your own optional reagents when putting forward that order, limiting the amount that the actual crafter needs to do themselves. To the most part, they just need somebody to press the button and make the piece of gear for them. Once the order has been placed, though, you will decide on a commission to pay the crafter, a small posting fee, and you'll send it off. Crafters will be able to then, you'll be able to see there's a place order, and there's also a my orders section. So any orders that you've placed, you can see whether they've been fulfilled or not. You'll also be able to interact with the auction house in a different tab for placing orders. You select your piece of gear that you want to craft. You then fill out this, create order, and off it goes. My initial thoughts is, like I said, I don't really believe that there will permanently be a big list of orders. I tend to feel that people will log on to their auction house and they'll just fulfill as many orders as they can, as they will likely be gaining skill points and some sort of benefit from doing it, more than just the commissions. This is why I tend not to feel that the gold making aspect of this is going to be too high. Blizzard, on the other hand, seem to have a slightly different opinion, but on the other end of the transaction, by being the crafter, this will be a great way for you to earn gold, increase your skill, and most importantly, help craft for your friends and guildmates. There's a problem with this sentence, Blizzard. There's a problem that these two are mutually exclusive. You're almost never going to find a scenario where both of these things are true at the same time. Um, Usually, and we've seen this in the past, if you're able to gain a skill point in some way, shape, or form by performing an action for somebody else, the likelihood of you making any gold from doing that at the same time is super duper mega slim. Take a little bit of a look back to the early days of Shadowlands with the base legendary items. There would be people standing in Oribos, quite literally just shouting to the masses, I will pay you X amount of gold if you bring me the materials needed so I can press a button and get a skill point. People were actively looking to buy those skill points, actually paying people for the luxury of pressing that button. Why? Because people want to rank up fast. They want to they want to be the best crafter, and they want to be the best crafter first, because that's ultimately where the money is. This gives me a big impression that the crafting system, these crafting orders, the work order system is probably not going to be super lucrative. The gold will have to be made in other areas of it, which we'll hopefully get to in a little bit. Um, it'll be one or one. It'll be either of these. You'll either make a reasonable amount of gold for it, or you'll increase your skill. I don't really feel that both of those two options are possible at the exact same time, unless there's only one chance that this could be they could both happen at the same time, and that's if it's crafting an item that's super specialist, and we mean like the best of the best. If you're the only person on your realm that has the ability to do the exact combination of what somebody wants for that piece of gear, then sure, you're going to increase your skill when you'll fulfill the order, and there probably won't be much competition from anybody else to fulfill the order, meaning you might be able to ask for well, you don't get the choice to ask, but you may be able to wait until the commission is right for you to press that button. Either way, it looks like a fun, engaging little system to play with. Profession specializations, to move on quickly then. This leads into, like I mentioned a second ago, if it's a really specialized craft that somebody wants, it may take a very specific type of crafter to be able to fulfill the order. This could be one way that Blizzard tries to balance the supply and demand of this new system, and allows it to be, allows you to actually maybe have to give a reasonable commission for somebody to make that item for you. The specializations is going to be a talent tree based system from what we gather so far. How quickly we can gain these specialization points, time will tell. We need to get our hands on the alpha to see this. But you will earn specialization points through a variety of activities. They're a little vague on what those activities will be, and you'll get to spend them permanently to improve different areas of your profession. This is an interesting choice of language. Spend them permanently. This seems to, at least to begin with, mean that there may not be any re-rolling of your profession specializations. This is a good and bad thing. If you can re-roll your talent tree for your professions, for example, there's nothing stopping you seeing a work order that requires you to be very specialist in one area, rejigging your talents, and so you can press the crafter button on that item, and then refreshing your talent tree to go and do a different work order. At least if they try to find a midpoint with this, that they might try and, I don't know, put some sort of cooldown on respecs, or maybe even a gold cost on respecs, who knows. But the fact that they seem to initially indicate that these specialization points will be a permanent thing, is an interesting choice and an interesting direction to go, I feel. It may ultimately end up that by the end of the expansion, say, you have enough specialization points that you can basically do everything. That might easily be the goal of theirs, to make it sort of somewhat time-gated and limited to begin with, but by the time that most of the content is in the hands of everybody and people are super powerful and running around in BIS gear anyway, that maybe by that point anybody can fulfill any order, and it's a sort of a slightly time-gated, a little bit of a catch-up system, I suppose. But anyway, the profession specializations and more importantly, the crafting orders were just the cherry on top of this article. Now we get to the meat and bones of it, really. Crafting with quality. This is the big talking point of this one. Crafting with quality is going to be a new layer on top of rarity. We've discussed already that common, uncommon, rare, epic, and legendary will still be the rarity modifiers that we know and love today. This is going to remain unchanged and won't directly relate to the crafting quality. In addition, the new layer is going to be indicative of these crafting quality icons. Crafting equipment will have 5 levels, or I wish they'd use the same. Terminology. We'll have 5 tiers of possible quality, tier 1 through till tier 5. Whilst many of the other crafted and gathered items, such as potions and ores, will only have 3 tiers of quality. This does apply to your materials as well. If you're a herbalist, if you're a miner, if you're a skinner, you are likely to be collecting all 3 of these tiers, presumably dependent on how good a skinner you are or how good of a miner you become. This article unfortunately doesn't touch at all on the gathering side of things, but from a crafting perspective, get used to this. This is going to be a big thing. We've seen this in other games as well, though. This is not an uncommon sort of system to use, and nearly every time I've seen it, it tends up being that anything but the best is just trash, which is a bit of a concern of mine initially, but we can hope that they balance things to maybe make these items a little bit more worthwhile. Let's look at it in a bit of detail then. So, for crafted equipment, the quality is going to be the primary modifier of item level. They say primary. Increasing the tier of quality may do other things, I feel, but the big thing is going to be it's going to boost its item level. Of course, with item level comes more stats, with each level of quality increasing it by a small amount. For example, a piece of crafted leveling gear, it's important to know that this is leveling gear, may give you variations between 270 and 280 at qualities or tiers, quality tier 1 through till 5. In all cases, the goal is to have the quality matter to be it worthwhile your effort to try and craft the higher tier stuff without having the gains being so large that the lower quality stuff feels worthless, doesn't feel worthwhile. This is a really, really difficult thing to balance in video games because you're not directly balancing numbers, you're balancing people's feelings, really, because ultimately it's going to be a cost thing for us crafters. How much is it going to cost to craft a tier 1 270 item level piece of gear? And more importantly, if we craft it at that item level, how successful do we feel we'll be at selling it? In comparison, how much is it going to cost us to craft a tier 5 that's going to be item level 280? Then we have to make the decision as crafters as well, is it worth that lovely question that gets thrown around the Discords and the Reddits all the time is it worth? Is it going to be worth spending the extra to craft the higher tier stuff? If the cost is too expensive to level up the higher tier stuff, and in such becomes far more difficult to sell it, then you may find that you fit somewhere in the middle. This is a balance thing. And how usually the way that video games play out is that over time, anything but the best is trash. Usually because the materials get cheaper, they become far more available. People's skill in the professions increases to a point where they can quite comfortably craft tier 5 stuff reliably at a consistent cost, and a meta starts to build around the top tier stuff. Short term though, at the very beginning, you'll see a whole bunch of different stuff and it will be a little bit Wild West. But as we know, at the beginning of an expansion, everything's the Wild West, so it should be good fun. For crafted items such as consumables that have quality, the effect of the quality is going to be a little bit more varied because, of course, you're dealing with things that isn't directly item level based. This is just for gear. For consumables, though, that are going to have quality, it will give you such as more powerful effects. It may change the duration on it a little bit more. It may change the amount of charges that can be that item provides you. This once again, is going to have to be carefully balanced so that, you know, uh, things become worthwhile and things don't cost like outrageously more for the top level stuff. We'll have to see. But I do like these levels of complexity that is being built into it. I dig this sort of stuff. I love trying to work out, well, if I craft things, if I try and craft my potions at a high tier, is it going to actually be profitable for me to do that? Or would I have a much easier time selling the cheaper stuff that's slightly less powerful? Where's the happy medium for me? Is it a good decision to go in this route or this route? It's the kind of stuff I enjoy. But I know others don't. So let me know what you feel down below. There is the expectation, though, this should be noted, there is the expectation that low quality versions of these items will sell for less. Duh. They're going to cost less, presumably, to craft, and so will ultimately sell for less. Their intrinsic value to people is less if they're not quite as powerful. This will provide a nice little niche for those that don't want to spend a lot of gold to be able to make the full suite of crafted items, but will also be cheaper to craft lower quality versions of these for a variety of reasons. As far as consumables are concerned, potions, flasks, food buffs, this sort of thing, there tends to be this mindset within the players of that anything but the best is trash. And it's understandable because there's aspects of this game that are very competitive. If you're raiding, if you're pushing bosses, if you're trying to defeat that next boss that you haven't been able to defeat yet, using anything less than the best quality equipment that's available to you means you're not only slowing down your own progress, you're also potentially slowing down others. I can imagine very quickly the requirement from raid leaders and people putting together Mythic Plus groups will be, you need to be bringing along the best quality consumables, irrespective of what they cost. Because if you can, you know, if the only limiting factor is gold here, the requirement will be to have the best of the best, because anything less, you're slowing down your progress and you're potentially slowing down the progress of 19 other people at the exact same time by not doing your bit. This tends to be why the games play out in the way that they do. People are competitive. People want to win. People want to win faster. I really hope that there's some good balancing done on this. This will be a trend that you'll start to see. Being that I really, really hope that the balancing of this is good. Both from the perspective of the end user of the items, we don't want the tier 5 potions to cost 10,000 gold a piece. But nor do we want, you know, the tier 1 items to only be 20 gold less than the top ones, because then nobody crafting them will ever sell them. It's gonna need to be carefully managed, I feel. Reagents are going to have a big part in this. For reagents, that these are also going to have quality. This quality slips in everywhere, by the way. That quality value will serve as a major input to the crafting. Crafting with higher quality basic reagents will provide bonus skill when crafting an item. We can see from this little alchemy screen here, there's simple potion. Not quite entirely sure what the potion does, but at the moment that doesn't really matter. All we can see is that there's a difficulty rating of 200 to adequately make these potions. And you are going to need to increase your crafting skill as close to this difficulty as possible. They have specified that if you can match the difficulty with your crafting skill, you're guaranteed to make the best quality version of it. In other words, a tier 5. Now, how are you going to boost this? The reagents, the materials that you need to put forward to craft that item, are going to directly reflect how much of this crafting skill you can obtain. Your profession, your leveling up of your profession will provide a flat rate of crafting skill. You can then throw higher quality reagents at a craft to push this further. And like I said, if you can get it above or as close to this difficulty rating, you'll give yourself the best chance of crafting the top tier items, the tier 5 crafted items. There are ways and means you can do this, not just with the reagents though. There are also these finishing reagents. You can see here, finishing reagents are going to be a new type of reagent that can improve aspects of the crafting process, either by increasing the skill or any of the crafting stats, for instance. We'll talk about some of the new crafting stats in a minute. You can see here we have this thing called resourcefulness. We have this thing called inspiration. There are a couple of others that we've been introduced to as well, which we'll get to in a minute. But you can choose to use these finishing reagents to hopefully push your crafting skill as high as possible. We can see the example they give here is brewed salt. Even these finishing reagents have quality. Using a brewed salt whilst crafting something will increase your inspiration by 9 and equally increase your crafting speed. I'm assuming there'll be a whole multitude of these different crafting agents. Where do they come from? We don't know. Are these also going to be crafted by other professions? Maybe. Finishing reagents feels like a very either an enchanting or maybe an inscription sort of thing. We don't know at this point. I really hope they don't just come from vendors. Like to keep the economy, keep the professions tied in with each other would be nice. But higher quality versions of these will do more for you. Increase your inspiration all the way up to 15 instead. If you use these, it's all, like I said before, it's all in the goal of pushing that crafting skill as close to the difficulty rating for that recipe as possible. If you can reach the difficulty rating, you'll be making the best stuff. And I believe this is going to just be a little visual indicator to where you sit right now. At the moment, with your current crafting skill, the difficulty is 200 to make the best things. With the materials that you've supplied and your crafting skill, you're still only looking to make something at tier 1. You've fulfilled tier 1, but you're unlikely to make a tier 2 quality one just yet. You're going to need to work harder to get that bar, to the other end. Lastly, please note that not all gathering reagents will have quality. It does indicate that some of them here, you can see the little icons on this herb here. That's a tier 3 quality herb by the looks of things. But not all of the reagents will have quality. The core reagents gathered by your primary gathering professions, so your ores, your skin, scales and hides from skinning, and any of the herbs from herbalism will have quality, as well as reagents from the primary professions. Cloth bolts, metal alloys, so any of the sort of the intermediate stuff will probably have a quality as well. Think shadowgast ingots, for example. Dragon ingots, or whatever they call them, are likely to have this quality rating attached to them as well. But there are a bunch that won't. So reagents like meat, cloth, fish, and any elements will not have this quality attached. So it's, it's filtering its way in through some of the stuff, but it won't be absolutely everywhere. Along with these finishing reagents, though, there's going to be the option on presumably mostly gear pieces to have missives as well. Missives is something that's been a big part of Shadowlands from the legendary crafting perspective, but now missives are going to be a little bit more deterministic and probably used a little bit more frequently in regular crafting as well. You can see they're building on the missive system. Draconic Missive of the Fire Flash, for example, is going to allow you to guarantee both crit and haste on a piece of gear. But it's also, interestingly, I think Blizzard might need to revise this because I don't think this will work very well, but it's also going to increase the recipe difficulty. Meaning, if you take it upon yourself to determine the stats of a crafted piece of gear, it's going to make it more difficult for you to craft that piece of gear at a higher difficulty level. On top of the fact that using a missive is probably going to cost something. Missives are never free. So you're going to increase the cost and you're going to increase the difficulty of making the high tier stuff. This may become a little bit too expensive for people to really care for. Another scenario that may need to be specifically balanced. What you may find this is effective for, though, is with the crafting orders. If we link this back to how all the system may tie in, if somebody in their crafting order puts forward, says that they want, I don't know, they want some bloody pauldrons of the giant, and they want them with haste and mastery, you may then need to fulfill that order. You may need to look to use certain missives to be able to click that craft button. And if somebody with the crafting order also puts forward that they want it at a certain quality tier, you may need to overcome any additional difficulty by being just a better crafter. As you can start to see how all of this is sort of merging together now, hopefully. Um, simple scenario as previously, though. It's all going to be thrown in with the crafting process to hopefully, if you put all of the combinations together, you should hopefully get the best bit of kit out of it. That's kind of the theory here. Your crafting skill, we've talked about this a little bit, your crafting skill is going to be determined by your base skill in the profession. So if you're a tailor, for example, just what skill are you in tailoring? Can also be modified by a variety of factors, though. We've talked about a couple. The quality of the reagents you use is going to determine your overall skill. The type of finishing agents is another way for you to modify your skill. The profession gear, which we haven't talked about much in this yet, the profession gear is going to provide you with skill bonuses. Additionally, there are apparently some consumables that you're going to be able to use. Crafters are going to be chugging potions to make their crafting more effective. That's an interesting concoction. And most significantly, your profession specialization. You're going to need to spec into being able to do something, and if you spec into it, you're going to be able to craft better. As you can see, though, there's 5 possible different ways for you to improve your crafting skill to hit this magic difficulty number. If you can hit the magical difficulty number, you're making the best stuff. If you don't hit the difficulty number, you just make the same item, sure, it's still going to cost you the same amount of resources, but it's not going to be as high a quality. As you can see in the below image, your crafting UI will make it quite clear to you on all of these factors what quality you're expected to craft the item at. So once we get this in our hands and we can start playing around with it, we'll be able to start seeing, well, just what effect is using higher quality reagents going to have, just how much can we amplify the power of our crafting skill by using optional reagents, and just how effective are finishing agents. We may find, and I was talking with people on stream today about this, we may find that there becomes an optimal way of doing things, and this is where we may turn to some add-ons to help us with this. I've already put forward the idea to the TSM guys that maybe the way that we deal with Trade School Master for crafting today is going to just be a little bit archaic comparison to what we're going to get in Dragonflight, and it may be time for Trade School Master, or, you know, anybody out there that's capable of making add-ons, to pull in some of this data to maybe do some of the maths for us behind the scenes. If you want to, for example, craft a tier 4 quality piece of gear, if there's a work order, one of your guildmates, one of your friends has sent you a work order, they want a tier 4 quality something as minimum, they're a bit cheap, they're not willing to pay for the tier 5 just yet, they want a tier 4 piece of gear, you may need to then work out, well, what's the most cost effective way to achieve enough crafting skill to be able to do that. Maybe should I increase the quality of my reagents and save myself the cost of a finishing reagent? How do I go about doing this? What's the balance there? Ultimately, it provides a lot more to think about, which I quite like. It means that things like the crafting costs are a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more flexible. It's not going to be as straightforward as 2 herbs plus 1 vial equals 1 potion. The way that you can go about crafting things is going to be wildly different going forward, and I think it's going to allow the smart ones out there, and the ones that plan ahead, and the ones that are willing to do the crunching of the numbers, and those that are willing to spend a bit of time engaging with this, they're the people that are going to be able to extract the profit from it. If you expect to just roll up, turn your blacksmith on, and expect to craft the most top quality gear and to just throw it on the auction house and then make a buck or two, you may struggle, is my honest opinion here. But those that do wish to engage with it and have fun doing it are the ones that I think are going to take advantage from this, which in my opinion is kind of how it should be. As you craft your item, there is though going to be a small amount of randomness added, because who doesn't love RNG, right? To your skill roll to represent the natural variation in your ability to craft. In addition, if you have any inspiration, one of the new crafting stats, you will have a chance to become expired and gain a significant bonus to your skill during that craft. This means you may do better than you expected, but never worse. This will indicate what your baseline ability will be. If you stack your inspiration and push your inspiration and it procs, you'll have the chance of getting a higher quality item when that does. That leads us quite nicely onto some of these additional crafting stats. I may chop this and this may be worthy of its own video in itself, to be honest, the additional crafting stats. So we'll see. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for that one. There's going to be a lot to talk about with these. But initially, there's 4 new crafting stats. These are going to start appearing on things like the crafting gear. You can sort of see it here. You can see it sneaked in here. Profession tools and gear. We as crafters and we as profession junkies are going to have our own little set of gear that we need to put together, which will hopefully help us boost this crafting skill. So what are they? Inspiration is the first one. Inspiration, nice fancy name for luck. We've seen luck in many other games. If you boost your luck, there's the chance to either proc something or to make something at a higher quality. Ultimately, if you become inspired, you may get a slightly better quality item than you expected out the back end, which would be nice. I would imagine inspiration will be the stat that you stack very heavily at the start of the expansion. When everybody is desperately trying to level up and when everybody is desperately trying to get to the point where they can craft those tier 5 quality items, if you're only skilled enough to be able to make tier 4 reliably, but you've got enough inspiration that you can maybe 20% of the time get lucky and craft a tier 5 item, and you're one of the first people to get there, as you can probably work out, that's where a lot of the gold can potentially come from. Later on down the line though, once everybody is leveled up and everybody's competing on price a little bit more so, once people can reliably make these top quality items, you may switch to resourcefulness, a new perk that's being added, which will give you a chance to use fewer reagents. The big thing I tend to suggest people do is focus on material price. If you focus on buying your materials for the best possible price, you give yourself more room when selling the item and to still make a profit. Resourcefulness is basically an indicator of what that might be. If you can, if you can heavily reduce the amount of materials it costs to craft an item, you set to have much lower crafting costs and in turn be able to sell it for more of a profit. Great. We saw this in BFA when we had the ranks. BFA and Legion, I think, when we had the ranks of the different professions. As you ranked up your profession, as you ranked up the craft, I should say, it just straight up used less resources. Resourcefulness is going to be Dragonflight's equivalent of this, and I think could be quite fun. Multi-craft is going to be a cool one. For those of you that have played around in BFA with things like the Silas proc, multi-craft is going to give you a chance to craft additional items. Only going to work on recipes for stackable items. So, unfortunately, you're not going to proc a mythic BOE, unfortunately, but you may be able to get an extra few potions or flasks or vials, as we'll talk about later, in a little bit more of a reliable quantity. If you want to go really hardcore potion master, you really want to pump out as many flasks as possible. If you want to be super competitive in the alchemy market, you may look to stack up your multi-craft once you've leveled your profession up sufficiently. If you can reliably craft the top tier potions, you start then stacking a little bit of resourcefulness to reduce the amount of reagents those potions need. You add on top of that a little bit of multi-crafting so that you occasionally proc a few extra ones. And on top of that, to really put the cherry on top, you stack then a little bit of crafting speed on top as well to just make it so you can make those potions faster. In a commodity market that's going region-wide, you may find that crafting speed becomes a big thing. Blizzard could manufacture it to be a big thing if they weirdly... I mean, today it takes like, 1.5 seconds to craft a potion. They could do something gross. They could make it take 10 seconds to craft a potion so that you have really good reason to stack some crafted speed bonuses. Because if you can get 10-second potions down to 5-second potions, you can make a lot more of them a lot quicker. we'll see how this balances out. Once again, I use the word balance. I really, really hope that Blizzard do a lot to focus on the balance. So that then, boys and girls, is the main ins and outs of exactly what the new crafting system is going to look like. That's our first preview of it. I'm going to leave this little video here for now. I just wanted to use this one to cover off exactly what is potentially happening. What are the systems in place? There's a little bit more to this article where we cover the philosophy of where Blizzard want to take this. I'll put that in a separate video because I know a lot of people won't care about that. They just want to know what the ins and outs are. And if I'm honest, there's a little, the conversation goes in a different direction when we talk philosophically anyway. And I appreciate this has been a very long video in the first place. So thank you all for getting to this point. If you have, make sure you hit that follow button, subscribe button. We're on YouTube now. Hit the sub button for all of the upcoming content. Hit that like button so that the algorithm knows you loved it. And I'll catch you all next time. Peace.